Here we are. Okay, so our topic today is the volunteer searching. Today I really hope to have a lot of your input on where we might go with our volunteer searching, because we do know that there is a lot of room for improvement in this particular area, more so even than what we have on the community information side, because the way that we do our searching in the volunteer software really hasn't changed much in about 10 years. And over the course of 10 years, I'm sure we found that there's a lot of room for doing things in a better or different way, and really we keep more information than we did 10 years ago. So it's pretty important for us to step back and reevaluate the kinds of searches we're offering, whether they're effective, and really make use of some of the modern web tools that we have available to us to make searches easier and more effective for the public in particular, since the volunteer software is very much oriented towards the public or your potential volunteers being able to identify opportunities that fit their needs. Okay. Does everyone see my screen okay? If you don't, please type or let someone know so that we can proceed from there. If not, I'm going to assume that everyone can see and go from there. Okay. What we're covering today, these are the searches and the areas of search that we're going to discuss today. We'll talk a little bit about how the search functions now, but mostly we'll be talking about the things that the search doesn't do, problems that we have with it, some change that we might like to make, and then at the end, I'm really hoping we can have a bit more open discussion, some opinions on those changes, anything else that I might have missed today. But we're really focusing on just these particular items, which are our front page, or what we call our basic search form. There isn't much searching that happens on the basic search form in the volunteer software. The only real search is our keyword search. Our step-by-step search, which is, if you click Search Step 1. Our student search, which is almost like the step-by-step search, but has a different front page. The What's New search, the advanced search form, saved searches, browse by organization and area of interest. We'll talk very briefly about the new My List feature, and then we'll talk about the search results page. Let's start with our front page. So the front page is used by the public and the staff both. It's very different from our community information front page in that you really can't customize it at all. The only thing you can do is take on or off the keyword search, really, and the browse by organization. Everything else is fixed. You have no ability to change it in any way, change the order of it, the wording, anything. It's very much, it is what it is, and no one can customize it. We have added an autocomplete feature recently, which I think most people will have noticed. Let's see if this has anyone who's big. I don't think we do in this one. Oh, you know what? I should do it. Pardon me. I'm going to do, just going to go into my local database for a minute here. Do English, which is broken all over the place, so please pardon me. I'm in the middle. This is in the middle of development. I know I have something in here that I can match. No. There we go. I have Queen-themed records in my database, pardon me. So our autocomplete feature allows us to find records by their organization name, the position title, and a specific area of interest in our database. So it will automatically suggest to the user as they type some matches that they might find in the database. It's very basic, especially in compared to what we have in the community information, in that it only draws from a few very small areas, but hopefully that is a bit helpful. But this is a very basic keyword search. You can only search in the organization name or the position title and the description and the areas of interest. So the keyword search in the volunteer software is not anywhere near as sophisticated as the keyword search that's available in the community information database, which we already know. Okay. When we do any kind of basic search like this keyword search, does tell the user a bit about their search, and anytime someone from the public does a search, it automatically tells them what it is that they searched for. In our advanced search, you can choose whether or not to have information about your search printed. And the layout of your search results, so what I see here, is determined by my display options. What I hope everyone is familiar with is that display options are both per user, but they're also per view of your database. So you can actually change what the public sees as well. In general, most people will have the public display look something like this. So this is our basic display in the volunteer software, where it has the title, the duties, and the organization, and then a little legend showing you which general community areas that position belongs to. Beyond that, if you change your format into use display format, which I had checked previously, that makes available to you the ability to add additional fields that you would like to see, change the order, see an alert column so you can tell if the record has comments or is non-public or deleted and so on. It also allows you to add the My List feature, which we'll be talking about as well, right here. That allows you to accrue a list of opportunities that you're interested in working with over the course of several searches. So if I go into this and look for other opportunities for this organization, I can add this in it. Here it shows me that the record I added in a previous search, and now I can add this second one and go and review my list and do other things with my list that I've accumulated, remove things from my list, and so on. Okay, so many of the features that are available from our search results aren't going to be available to you unless you have that table format checked. Okay, and then all of a sudden you have access to all of these other types of links and features and the ability to add other fields to your display and so on. That's a little bit about our search results. Okay, I'm not going to cover this. This entire slide is there for your reference. This slide explains how our full text searching works. It talks about how wildcard searching works, how we do word forms. So for example, if you search for house, it's the same as a search for houses. If you do a search for child, it's the same as a search for children. So this just describes how that searching works so that you have it as a reference and understand how keyword searching works in CIOC, but I'm not going to go into great depth. This is posted, and hopefully some of you have had a chance to look at it already. All right, so besides our keyword search on the front page, we also have our step-by-step search, which I'm sure everyone on the call is familiar with. The stages that are available are step 1, which is communities. That's even on the next page, so I won't cover that. Or, pardon me. It's communities, areas of interest, and then I'm trying to remember, schedule, I think. So we'll go into that in more detail. Student search is almost exactly like a step-by-step search, but you also have the ability to specify an age. This is geared to student ages, so it's specifically intended, the age list that people are picking from is specifically a sort of student age range. And you optionally have the ability to have OSSD. If you want to turn off OSSD and you aren't already aware, if you turn it off on your advanced search page, it will also turn it off on your student search form. So for anyone outside of Ontario who didn't know that, that is how you turn OSSD off on your student search if you're not interested in using it, because that is obviously an Ontario-only option. We have our What's New search. Which shows records updated, created, or modified in a certain number of days. And you can set it to show a certain number of records. So it'll show the, pardon my broken software here. I should do it in the test site. That's good. So if I pick a certain number of records, it'll show in the order the most recently updated, at least 10 records. If there aren't 10 records in this database, but it would show the most recently updated. And again, the display options or whatever else I set for my search results. Whatever you set your search results to be, that gets applied over every kind of search that you're going to do. Finally, we have our browse searches, browse by organization and browse by area of interest. One of the things that is a big complaint about these browse searches is that often it's very difficult to get a sense of all the organizations. Take this database here, there aren't very many records. I can't even tell where to find an organization. What some of you may not know is if you take off the letter, you can actually get the whole list of organizations. So this would show it not separated by letter, but the whole list. The purpose of the browse by organization is just a quick way to access records for a given organization instead of going through the step-by-step search. The same is true of our area of interest search. And again, in this sparsely populated database, it's hard to find an area of interest. I can look at them all by going without a letter. In this case, I've only got a few. Again, a quick way to get to a particular category without having to go through a step-by-step search, but we know that there are issues with both of those searches. And that really is all we have available to the public. Our staff users have access to the advanced search menu, which really provides most of what's available in a step-by-step search, but all on one form, and some additional search capabilities in terms of the dates, records with email, public, non-public, the ability to bring up expired records and deleted records, which you can't bring up any other way, and also checklist searches. So I have the ability to say, find records suitable for newcomers, things that I can't do from any other type of search. None of the other publicly available types of searches have any capability of doing any of these additional criteria, such as if someone really wants to do a one-on-one type of volunteer activity, they don't have access to a search form right now that allows them to search by an interaction level. The staff does, but the public does not. All right. So those are our various types of searches. From the front page, there's also our search tips. I think most people are aware that CIOC has an official search tips page, which I can show you here, which I believe most people chose to have included in their database. For any of you who don't have the official search tips, you can ask to get it put into your database. You do have the ability, though, to create your own or to modify the one that CIOC distributes to you. So what we have here is a default that we offer to members, but from here on, you can change this to really suit your community and have whatever additional information you would like to have in it. The idea that it's a reference point, particularly for the public, to tell them how to find information. If I was not logged in, then the other thing that I would see from my front page is an ability to log into my volunteer profiles, for those who have turned volunteer profiles on. So there's a few things we know about each of these types of searches in terms of what is working and what doesn't work and things that we might like to do. Starting from our basic search page, let me just check, I've got some questions here. There we go. I'm going to go through my questions here. Woo, hey, quite a few. I'm going to go through these questions here and then I'll move on. Here we go. Okay. All right, I believe Kelly has already had answered to the PowerPoint that it is linked from the session list where you were able to go and look at the list of sessions and the link to sign up. I have a post right underneath there that links to an area with all of the PowerPoints for all of the sessions, and that PowerPoint's been available since I think Monday, so you can just go there and download it at any time. Will the redevelopment address the need to have the keyword search expanded in any way? That question is from Sharon. I absolutely think that it should. In the end, that will be up to all of you. I think there are lots of ways to go with the keyword search, having it available to search more fields, and the ability to have a sort of anywhere search that doesn't distinguish between the organization and the position title, and really to search anything. So there's lots of places where we can go with that to make it more effective in the same way we have in the community information software. What we would be looking from you in order to improve that search is which fields in the database you think we need to source from in order to have people do effective keyword searching. So for instance, if you think having the suitability field is a really important field for people to be able to do keyword searching on, because they might be searching for hearing impaired or English as a second language or newcomer or something else that you might have in your suitability field, then we need to know that, and we can add that to our list of fields that we do keyword search on. But what we need is input from you about what you think your community, which fields you think your community would want to be able to do keyword searching in. It's important not to include too much because you do get noise sometimes, too many results. So it's something that I hope you can take back with you to think about which fields you think are important for someone to be able to do a keyword search in. And for those of you who are familiar with both sides of the software, hopefully that will help you understand sort of the drawbacks that we have in the community information side of returning too many records from searching too many places versus the benefit of being able to access all the information that's there. Does that answer your question, Sharon? I'm going to assume yes. Kelly was asking, why would you use My List? So the My List feature, which is available in both areas of the software, is a way for you to accumulate records sort of over many different searches. So things you're thinking about or things you want to do something with as a group. So for staff, that's generally if you want to be able to work on a number of records at once for some reason, either add a new area of interest to those records, or some other change you might want to make to multiple records at once. It allows you to accumulate a list and then do something with it. For members of the public, because you can turn that option on for the public, it allows them to sort of accumulate a shopping cart, if you will, of volunteer opportunities that they might want to apply for that they can go back to at any time. So that's the purpose of My List for staff versus the public. It really is different for each. The other thing we've added along with the My List feature is for those using the Client Tracker application. The My List feature ends up tying into your Client Tracker session. So if you were talking to a client, you can record the referrals that you make to that client. It's not as applicable in the volunteer software because we already have a referral system built into the volunteer software. But for those using the community information software and the volunteer software together, it does provide you with a way to show all the resources that you gave to a single client if it's a mix of both community information and volunteer opportunity. Sharon asked if the keyword changes would be for all the volunteer users. So generally speaking, when we decide which fields go into a keyword search, that usually applies to everyone. That said, we have recently implemented some changes in the community information side that allow you to make some choices about which fields go into our search index. That was put in for the extra field work that was done in the community information side. And now that we've started to do that, it actually opens up the ability for us to give you some choices about which fields you want to index and to change that over time potentially. So one of the things that we can do if it's of interest is just provide a list of possible fields that you would be allowed to include in your search, and allow each member to have some decision-making power about which fields they think are relevant to include in their particular index. But it would apply across your whole database. So you couldn't have the staff search, fields X, Y, Z, and public search different fields. We can't do that. But what we can do is allow you, as being an independent member, have different fields than some other member might have. That's certainly something that we could do. Right now, it's blanket. Everyone has the same fields. Okay. All right, I'm going to close up the questions list now, and we're going to talk a little bit more about what we want to do with the basic search page. One of the things that we know we want to do is make that search page a little more customizable like it is in the community information software. We want you to be able to choose which searches you make available and really the way that your form is laid out. Some of those changes you're already going to get because they're part of the development work that we're doing right now that would be delivered in the summer. This would allow you to choose from a few different predefined layouts of your search page and also create your own. So if you don't like, I don't know why you wouldn't, if you don't like this boxy CIOC form that everybody gets and you want it to look different and do your own layout, starting with the summer release, you will already be able to customize that layout and change where those various links to the searches appear, where the keyword search box is if you're using it, and so on. What we also want to add is the ability to add and remove different kinds of searches in a more customizable way, whereas right now the only thing you can take on and off is the keyword search and the browse organization with opportunities. We want you to be able to do a complete choice. So if you have a portal that is intended entirely for seniors, it's really annoying that you can't take the student volunteers link off. So we would propose that you would have choices for all of these. In a very specialized type of portal, the step-by-step search might not make sense. You might just want to be able to send them to a complete list of the opportunities or a complete list of categories. And the idea here is to give you a little bit more choice about how that search form is presented and give you an opportunity to decide which searches to make available. Okay. I don't even want to get deeply into this. This particular point just goes back to the keyword search. The idea of a thesaurus means that the software understands synonyms. So it understands that car and automobile are the same thing. And therefore, if someone searches for automobile, it would automatically retrieve a record that had car. This is something that we're considering for the community information software, and if we did implement that, it would just be a bonus to the volunteer software. It would apply to both. It's something where if we implement a thesaurus, it becomes available everywhere in our keyword searching. And we already talked about additional keyword searching fields so that there are more options about where you can search. And that might include having some that are available only to staff, like the ability to do a keyword search in the internal memo, for example. Okay. If there are no questions about basic search page, I'm going to talk about the What's New page and the Browse By. And then I'd like to come to the group and see if there are other ideas that anyone's got about how that might work. And we've got a few other things to discuss after that as well. Okay, so the What's New page, there's definitely room for improvement here. One of the things that we would potentially like to do is give you a choice of what new means. Does it mean newly created? Does it mean updated? Does it mean modified? Right now, it means updated, but some people would like to see any kind of record change, even just a minor modification, bump that record up. Some people wouldn't. Some people think new means brand new, not just a changed record, but an absolutely brand new record. So allowing people to make that choice for themselves about what the default is doesn't mean we would take away the option for people to make their own selection. It just means that you wouldn't have to have updated in the past 14 days be your default. You would have an ability to choose that. Also, if you wanted to choose what your default number of records to show, if you wanted to always show 30 records or always show 10 records by default, that you would then have that ability to set it so that every time someone came to the What's New page, they would always see at least 10 records, for example. One of the things that we would like to see, potentially, is the ability to do featured opportunities. So if you want to highlight one particular record in your database as featured, or a monthly feature of either an organization's opportunities or one particular opportunity, that you would have a way to bring that record up in a more prominent way and sort of advertise that record apart from the rest. So maybe at the top of the What's New page, you'd have a nice little highlighted box that would say, you know, featured position, and just highlight that one position separate from the rest. There's many different ways we could do that. You could have a featured opportunity page where you could add some information of your choosing, and then the listing. There's lots of different ways we could approach that if that was an idea that was appealing, and that would be optional. So if you didn't want to do a featured opportunity, you wouldn't have to. But having that capability for those that want to do something like a featured opportunity or even a featured organization, that's an idea that we may want to discuss. So got a question? So Sharon's saying that they already do a featured opportunity that they have to do manually. And I know I've seen that on other sites as well, where they've done either a featured organization or a featured opportunity. That's where that idea came from. Okay, next. Browse by. So there are a few things that I've already mentioned that we know are wrong with our browse by search. For one, on our browse by organization, having it broken down by letters, although that makes sense on the community information side, it really is quite a disaster on the volunteer side. It's not helpful to the user. There don't tend to be enough different organizations that it really makes sense to break it down by letter. So there are a few ways we could deal with this. Potentially giving each of our members an option about what they prefer. One is the current, where they can leave it broken down by letter. So if they do have hundreds of organizations and they chose to break it down by letter so that they didn't have too many at once, we could do that, but include that show all. So what all of you saw me do manually, where I went into browse by organization and then I took the letter off, that we would just provide that as a link. So I can continue to have letters and then have another option at the end that says show all. That would give me the list of all organizations so people had a choice. Another way we could do is just to allow people to show them all on one page by default, so that there is no breakdown by letter. We just always show all the opportunities, and potentially this would just skip down to that letter. So if I click D, it would just scroll the page down to where the D's start, but still would list them all on one page. And finally, to break it down, so maybe we have A to F and then G to K and so on, so that we still have it in sort of smaller pieces, but more on a single page instead of one letter at a time. So there's a few different ways we could approach that, and if any of them seem particularly appealing to you, it would be good to know. But even if we have a few, we would give people the choice, so we would probably always continue to allow people to do it the way we do now, maybe with the show all link. But if having the ability to have them all on one page and just scroll down to the letter that you want is something that's appealing, that's something we could add in addition if it was desired. So for our browse by area of interest in particular, if we create large listings with many, many on a page, for instance, even all of them on a page, most of you have quite a number, you know, up to 80, 100 more different areas of interest, specific areas of interest, I should clarify. Having a list that large on one page is not particularly helpful. So if we did want to look at having more of those on one page, one of the first things we can do is looking at putting them in columns, so that instead of having one long skinny list that goes all the way down the page, we could have them broken down into 2 or 3 different columns going across. So it would go accounting, clerical, data entry, debugger, duck washer, friendly visitor, going this way across the page so that people could see more without having to scroll down one big, giant, long list. Not as much of a consideration with organization names because they can be long, but with areas of interest, they tend to be pretty short. So giving people the opportunity to arrange them in columns where they display 2 per line or 3 per line is another way that we could look at having more available to the user at once. One of the things that we really need to look at, which we already do in our community information, is auto-hiding values with no records. This is particularly important for the public, who really, there's no point in showing them an area of interest that has no records. It doesn't help them in any way. So in the community information side, if you're working with the thesaurus, you have the option in your view setup of saying don't show subjects that have no records. That's a tweak that you can make for every view. So your staff, you can have it always show the subject, even if it's a 0 count, but for the public, you can hide them. So what we would be looking at is a similar thing for the volunteer side, where if the area of interest had nothing, like this one, Icelandic elf inspector, it just wouldn't show. And that makes your list more compact, and you don't end up showing people options that don't have any volunteer opportunities associated with them right now anyway. So before I get into step-by-step, does anyone have any comments or questions on either the basic search, what's new, or browse by searches? And then we'll get into step-by-step and some of the others. Here we go. Okay. Oh, Sharon was just pointing out the how you get the whole list. So again, how I did that, I'll just, in case anybody missed that if I went too fast. When you click on an individual letter, at the top it'll have the letter in your address bar. If you take that off, it always shows the whole list. And that's true for both the areas of interest and for the browse by organization. Unfortunately, we don't provide that link to people. You have to know it there and do it manually. So that's definitely something we want to make people have the ability to have access to through something like a show all link, so that everybody has the opportunity to view the whole list instead of having to click on each letter at once. Okay, so I'm going to go into our step-by-step search, which is really one of the main searches and certainly one of the main ways we expect the public to do our searching right now. There are pluses and minuses to this. I want to explain a little bit about why we have our search in a step-by-step search to begin with, and why that's good and bad. So both our step-by-step and student search forms are designed so that at each stage you're likely to have at least one opportunity in your search results. This is particularly true of the step-by-step search. So I'm only given the option to choose areas or items that are actually going to give me a result. And that means if I click halt in an area, it's going to limit the general of areas of interest to things that actually have something associated with them in Halton. So it's taking my first criteria of Halton and then giving me counts of the opportunities that are in that area. Okay, so if I went back and picked additional areas, the counts that I'm getting are different. They're higher than they were before. So what we're doing by having the step-by-step is trying to guide people into getting a result, instead of, if they picked a community and an area of interest on the same page, those two things might not match. The area of interest might be there and the community might be there, but not at the same time. So there might not be that area of interest in that community. By having step-by-step, we're ensuring that at different stages they're going to get actual results. The problem is this falls down as soon as we get to the last step of the search. The dates and times doesn't confine you in any way. So it's still possible to get nothing if you get this far and do a date and time. You could still end up with nothing if you pick something that doesn't match any of the opportunities you previously assembled. But in general, the purpose of our step-by-step search is to try and make sure that users get at least one result at the end. So there are 4 steps. One is the community or geography, which has changed pretty recently to allow you to search by groups instead of specific communities. So in the past, you could only search the specific communities, and recently we've added these groups so that you can search whole areas at once. So if I search Halton area, it's automatically going to search Burlington and Oakville, and really any other community that belongs under there. So the other thing we did was recently was change the way communities work in the volunteer software so that although you choose communities for displaying in your search forms, you can really add any community you want. So even if I'm running a database in Hamilton, I can say that a particular opportunity is also sourcing volunteers from Halton in Niagara. I can include that. It won't end up coming up on my search form because that isn't one of the communities I picked for my search form. But in the data and in the behind-the-scenes searching logic, it will make use of those communities. So if I, for instance, make an opportunity that is available for all of southwestern Ontario, then if I did a search in Hamilton or in Halton, it's going to automatically bring up that record, even though it's not specifically listed as Burlington or Oakville or Acton or anywhere else. It understands that a listing for all of southwest Ontario means Halton and area and Hamilton and so on. So that's the major change we've made recently. But the idea here is geography. That's our step one. Our step two is our general area of interest, which is currently mandatory. It's actually the only mandatory step in our step-by-step, which we'll discuss later has its own issues. But that's currently the only mandatory thing that everyone must pick. We then have our specific areas of interest, which is based on the general areas that we select. One of the things that everyone is, I'm sure, aware of is that your general and your general area of interest is not actually part of your search. Only your specific area of interest is used when you do a search, unless you don't pick any specifics. So if I pick family, and then I don't pick either of the two subcategories of family, it's going to search both of these, but it really is never going to consider the general area of interest family in my search. That general areas of interest are only used for the purpose of picking specific areas of interest. And really, if people aren't aware of how to properly configure their areas of interest to take this into account, this can be really misleading, and we do know that that's a problem. The other issue we have here is people don't want to have general areas of interest or only want to have general areas of interest in the search. There's no ability to skip any of these steps right now. And finally, we have schedule. In later slides, I'm going to talk a bit about the issues with schedule, but the number one that I've already identified is that last step of doing a schedule doesn't ensure that you're going to get any results, unlike other steps in it. It's also misleading for other ways, but the number one problem with our schedule search is you could end up with nothing. After going through all of those steps to ensure that you had some results, you could pick the wrong date or time and end up with nothing. Okay, we're going to go as far, I've got a question. Go to that first. Okay. Give me one moment here. All right. Okay. Auto hiding, just a comment that auto hiding interest with no records is good. So yeah, definitely that's something I think that we will want to approach. Kelly has a question, do people like the number of opportunities shown after each area of interest? So Kelly, you mean when we go to browse by area of interest, the number of opportunities shown, is that what you mean, or did you mean step by step or anywhere? Anywhere, okay. So your question is really, do people like having the count next to each one? I don't know if anyone has any comments on whether that's helpful or not. It's less of an issue when you hide interests that don't have any count. For me, I like to see the number of things I'm going to get. It might change my choices a little bit. If I know I'm only going to get one result if I click on something. But that if that was something that people didn't like, it's possible for us to hide that information. It doesn't have to be there. We could introduce an option where it didn't show the counts. We would still end up using them. So even if we don't display the counts, they're still going to come into play in terms of, in our step-by-step search, we don't show items that aren't going to give any results. So even if it didn't show the count, we're still using that count behind the scenes to show you which things you can choose. Because if you chose something that had no results, there's really no point in forcing the user to go through that search to get nothing. So whether we put the count there or not, we're still going to be using that number, but if it's something that people don't like, it's certainly something that doesn't have to be there, and that can be a setting where people can choose. You're thinking, Kelly, that you don't like it? Or, okay. So Kelly is saying that she was, she felt that there was some evidence that having too much information on the screen is discouraging to people in terms of following through. So by removing some of the information that's presented to the user, it might be a nicer process for them and one they're more likely to complete. So that's certainly, if you feel that you would like to have that, or even would like to pilot that and try that to see what the response of your users are, that's a relatively easy change to make. It would certainly be one that we would put at the discretion of the members so that each member could decide whether or not they wanted to show those counts. Okay, I've got one more question here. Oh, great. So a group, I guess one agency in the database had been leaving the number of positions blank because they didn't want to limit the number of volunteers. And of course, that means you'll never get it in a search, is the problem. Because if you don't specify a geography, it's likely, if anyone picks a geography, it will never get included, because obviously in order to get a result in a community, you have to put something in the number of positions. That's the only way currently to add a community. So I think what you're pointing out, correct me if I'm wrong, is that there's no way to say that it's available in the community without giving a specific number. You can't just say unlimited. And I think the issue we run into and why we ask for numbers is it gives, when we do have that count, it gives people it gives us a number to work with. And if we don't have that, it gets more difficult for us to say the number of opportunities available. So if I go back to communities, really it's only used here. When we say individuals needed, so here we have 21 opportunities, 230 individuals needed. That individuals needed comes from the number of positions, whereas the number of opportunities comes from the actual individual entries that we have. So one position would count as an opportunity, but if that one position, we said 30 were available in Mississauga, that would count as 30 individuals. So we start to run into an issue if we don't get people to put a real number behind it about how do you then fill in the number of individuals needed. How do you make that decision when you haven't been given anything specific? We can work around that if we needed to, but it would start to get, this number would then become misleading. So what we could do, if we had a member that wanted to take that approach of allowing unlimited, is we could add the ability to say, take out the number completely as a database-wide option where you stop doing the count. It would not appear here, so it would no longer say the number of individuals needed, and it wouldn't say the number in the record either, but on the understanding that then you can't get that information out. And once people don't have to enter in the number, they won't. So you won't have it anywhere. And whether that's good or bad is really at the discretion of the member. Whether that's a number that's important to you or whether you feel that's valuable to give people a sense of how many volunteers they're looking for. Some people may want to know, are you looking for a couple of people or are you looking for 500 people? Am I one of a crowd or am I Are you actually looking for just 1 or 2 people to fulfill this? That may be important to some volunteers. So it's a bit of a judgment call. Certainly if it was a serious issue for any of our members, it is something we can look at addressing, but it will have knock-on effects. So it won't just affect that one opportunity, it really affects the way we display information all over the software. But it's not impossible to do that, to basically say add a community without specifying a number of positions. But if you don't, right now, you can't even add it into that community, and it will never show up in those searches for that community. Does that cover what you're thinking? I know it doesn't give us a solution. It really says if this is something that's an issue, something we should come back to, we need to look at what the issues may be. But certainly if it's something that you want to see addressed, or that is something to flag to you, it's something we can note and try and come up with some potential solutions for. But it's never going to be, there's knock-on effects, so it's going to have consequences. Okay, and we had an agreement by another person, Haley, that the ability to hide accounts is potentially beneficial. So that's certainly something we can add to our potential to-do list. Okay. So yay, we've gotten through all the questions. I'm going to move on now a little further into the issues with the step-by-step search. We've talked about a few already. General areas of interest are not taken into account in the search results. They're only used to select specific areas of interest. We know this can be tremendously misleading, especially when people do things like general help as a specific area of interest. It's not in any way tied to a general area. So if someone says general area of interest children, specific area of interest general help, that general help could also be filed under education and sports and any other number of general categories. And people may get results that they're completely not expecting, not understanding, and why should they, that the general area of interest is not in any way involved in the selection of the specific. There's 2 problems here. One is whether general area of interest is generally misleading, and 2, it is really a setup problem, that you shouldn't have any specific area of interest that is so generic that it isn't meaningful on its own. So that means that having a specific area of interest called general help that's filed under many categories is a bad idea. It's going to give really, really misleading results. So our number 1 issue is sort of an education issue in terms of people putting together their areas of interest, that everyone needs to understand that every specific area of interest has to stand completely on its own. So if you want a general area of interest for family, it should say general area of interest family. It shouldn't just say general area of interest, and it shouldn't, or general help. It shouldn't be filed under many, many categories, because in the end, every specific area of interest has to stand alone. And when somebody gets to page 2, whatever it is that they get, they're picking independently of the previous page. The previous page is picking a general, only serve to narrow down the options that I'm given here so that I don't have a list of 100 or 150 different specific areas of interest. It's not to pick criteria. So the general area of interest doesn't help at all in the search. Do we need to correct the search in some way? That's certainly one potential thing that we need to address. But there is the underlying issue of how do we make sure that everyone understands that those specific area of interest have to stand completely by themselves. And I think one of the ways that we can do that is giving people the option to just get rid of general area of interest entirely. The problem with doing that is you can present people with just too much information. If you do have 150 specific areas of interest, which is really common in the membership, how is anyone supposed to cope with having 150 areas of interest presented to them? And that's why we have general area of interest to begin with, is to give people more manageable lists. And really this is something that I know everyone on the call is likely really familiar with, something that comes down to what is the classification system that is going to be used in the volunteer software. Can we come up with a model that everyone can use? And that's not really a software issue in as much as it's something that everyone needs to, or all of you need to work together to make a decision about, is there a classification system that we can all agree on that's effective for everyone. In the community information software, they get the advantage of having official classification systems that everybody uses, that everyone keeps up to date, that they can make sure are effective for everyone. Right now, you all suffer from having to figure it out on your own. And if you don't really understand what the implications are of the choices that you make, you can get some really difficult results. And it's a lot of work for each individual center. So that's in part a technical issue, but a lot of it is really that the volunteer community as a group needs to try and come up with what should this classification look like. And once that happens, we can make sure that we have the technical tools to accommodate it. But the first step is really in deciding how do we want to classify this information, and can we all agree on a certain way of doing it? Can we reduce the burden on everyone by trying to come up with something that we mostly all agree on? So that's a big issue that I know a number of people who are on the call are already familiar with. Okay, I'm going to look in questions now to make sure I can capture everything here. Kelly wanted to clarify general and specific areas of interest. So what everyone has in their own database is going to be different. So any example that I'm giving in this database is just what someone has entered in this database. And what you have in your database can be totally different. But I'm going to go very quickly into what the setup looks like so we can see what the issue here is. Pardon me, it's loading.net, which no one has used, and so it's going to take a long time. Okay, so your general areas of interest are not in any way stored in a record. So nothing that gets listed in general areas of interest is associated with a record in any way, not at all. All that these general areas of interest do is allow us to pick a specific area of interest. So let's say I create a new one. I'll call it new category. Okay. I'm going to go and look at specific areas of interest now. Specific areas of interest are attached to records. So when you are working with your record, every single record that you create should have at least one of these specific areas of interest attached. Your list is going to be completely determined by what you have set up. So no two members have exactly the same list. Some people don't have anything that looks anything like someone else's. So this has all been determined individually. Each member has their own list. Each interest, specific area, so that means ones that are attached to records, can be attached to multiple general areas of interest. This is where the problem comes in. So here I have an interest called accounting that can be listed under office, royal, these are jokes, right? So office, royal assistant, social, and general manpower. If anyone picks any one of these general area of interest, they will see a specific area of interest accounting presented to them. But the general areas of interest are not in any way attached to the record, meaning it doesn't know whether you first picked general manpower and then accounting or royal assistance in accounting. It only knows that at the end of the day, you picked accounting. So this is where the problem comes in, if people think that because I picked royal assistance first, that I'm going to have royal assistance accounting, and that is not the case. If I pick Royal Assistance and then Accounting, it's exactly the same as picking General Manpower and then Accounting, because all that matters at the end is accounting. There's no reference anywhere in the record tying it to any one of these general areas of interest. It's just a means of narrowing down, locating it a specific area of interest. Okay. I've got a comment from Haley that they have locally made their specific areas of interest really small, probably pretty close to what most people would have as general areas of interest, instead of having that list of 150. And so for a group like you, Haley, having the ability to get rid of the general area of interest would be really beneficial, because you have so few specific areas of interest that you really have no need of that general area of interest step. So you're exactly the kind of group for which we need to consider having the ability to completely not use general areas of interest at all. So that's definitely something that's on the table in terms of software changes that we would consider. If you have that small of a list of specific areas of interest, there's no need for you to have general areas of interest. And that may be something that as a group, all of you can consider. I do think that a lot would be gained if everyone could, as a group, come up with something that was effective for everyone. But in the end, people like to have local variation, and that's okay too. There's usually a nice medium between what everyone wants and what your individual community needs. But certainly we can't come up with a technical solution until we understand how you want to keep the information. So what we need for us is potentially you all as a group of volunteer centers, to talk to each other about how you want to classify your positions and give us some ideas about how you want it to work then, what kind of information you want to keep. And if there's more than one and you can't agree, that's okay. We just need to know that so that we can set it up to give you those choices. Okay, and Sharon is indicating that the volunteer group met yesterday and does plan on working with this. So I hope that any of you who are on the call who hadn't attended those meetings, if you would like to find out more about this, that you meet with that group when they have their next meeting and give some input. Because I will be hoping to get some feedback from that group to use to decide what kinds of choices and options and tools that we'll make available to make this work better than it does now. Okay. Okay. Sharon is asking why she can't see everyone's questions. I think it might go just to the moderator. Sharon, I'm not sure that it actually goes
only to the moderator.
Yeah, it only goes to the moderator.
The moderator can publish them, I think. I don't know.
So I'm trying to make sure that I repeat everyone's questions. I'm not sure, Sharon, why that is. I've only ever attended these as a moderator and looked at the questions as a moderator, so I'm not really sure what other people see. All right. So I'm through the queue. I'll come back if I see any more. If I see my question thing. Oh, no, here we go. One more. Oh, no, it's okay. If I see my question thing flashing, I'll return to it. All right, next, the student search. Unlike the regular step-by-step search, the front page of the student search doesn't take into account you're picking ages or OSSD, so you can end up having no results from the student search. So it's just something that we know is a potential problem, that people could put in criteria on the student search page, click next, and get nothing. Because we don't have any, those three criteria are on the same page. We don't have any way to ensure that they're picking something that's going to give them a result. There are potential solutions to that. We may be able to identify before they click next that the criteria they're picking is not going to work. But it's just something to flag and be aware of. The next one is an important one for me, I think. It's about the schedule search. So searching times is really difficult in this type of system because it's not clear by the schedule form that you fill out. If I click Wednesday afternoon, Friday afternoon, does that mean you have to be there on Wednesday and Friday afternoon? Or does it mean that you can be there Wednesday or Friday afternoon? Not clear. And when it's not clear in the data, and so we can't know when we search whether you have to say you're available for both. So someone could click, you know, oh, I have a free Friday afternoon. I want to find a volunteer that would be able to work into my Friday afternoon schedule, and I pick Friday afternoon. It could bring up an opportunity where you have to be there Monday afternoon and Friday afternoon, and that opportunity is not suitable for me because I'm only available Friday afternoon. So we know that this is questionably helpful. So it may be helpful because at least it narrows it down a little bit, but it's important to understand the limitations of this search and that it can be really, really misleading. So personally, I would recommend taking this out of the default step-by-step search, or at least have the ability to take it out if you don't want it there. However, I do know that sometimes that's really important to a user. They really, when it happens, really matters, and that's a major criteria that they need to use for their searching, and some narrowing down is still better than nothing. So I think we still potentially need to have options for users to do that schedule search, but what's important is to make sure the users understand what the results mean, that it might not necessarily mean that it fits their schedule perfectly, and also to give the option of taking that search away for anyone who thinks it's just one extra step or they don't like the fact that it can give misleading results. So that's my comment on schedule search. I would like it to be optional in the step-by-step so that everyone can choose whether or not to put it in. Okay, sorry, I've lost my question thing here. I've lost my questions. They're
probably in another window, but you can also do view.
Here we go. There. Sorry, I lost my questions window. Here we go. So we have, for simplicity and currency, in general, isn't it better to maximize the retrieval of opportunities and then have the potential volunteer call the agency for more information? I believe it's better to give more options than to leave things out, and that's what we do now. You definitely don't want to leave something, have a volunteer not get an opportunity that would have fit their needs, rather than have them have a few that don't fit, sort of a few extras that they then don't realize don't fit until they go and view the details. So, and that's how we approach it now. And I hope that that mostly fits the model that works for people. I only feel that if people don't like the way the schedule works or don't think that it's helpful, especially when we're talking about giving people too many steps and too much information, that we probably want people to have the option of taking that search away if they don't want to have it. That's about my only comment. But right now, to clarify, it returns too many. It's not the case that it returns too few or that it leaves them out. It prefers to give you too many things and not too few things. So if I click only Friday afternoon, it's going to bring up every single opportunity that has Friday afternoon, even if it was actually an opportunity that was required you to be there all day on Friday. It would still come up. If it has any crossover with what the volunteer chooses, it's going to come up. So it definitely prefers to give you too much information that you can then get clarity on if you actually view the details of the opportunity or call the volunteer center or the posting agency and so on. So hopefully that clarifies. Okay. All right, next. Next one is about adding. So we've talked a lot about things we can take away. The next one is about adding criteria. This isn't necessarily about adding it to a step-by-step search. This may mean that we need to add a completely different type of search, an advanced search, let's say, for the public, where they can have the opportunity to ask about additional criteria. So that means age searches for people who are not students. It means using our suitability list for those of you who do use that suitability list, which might say things about, is it suitable for someone who's ESL, who has a hearing impairment, who has a physical disability. Those who have those special criteria don't have any way to leverage the fact that that information can be kept at the volunteer opportunity and to do a search to find those opportunities easily. So by giving people access to all of those other kinds of fields that we keep information on and that staff can do searches on, like the interaction level, if they really want group volunteerism, they don't want to have the one-on-one, they actually want to do sort of large group activities with many other volunteers. That's something that's important to them. To have the ability to do a search that narrows down just by those types of opportunities is really valuable potentially to that one volunteer. I don't need to be telling any of you this, I'm sure you all know. The same with a short-term versus a long-term commitment, or wanting to participate in a single special event, whether or not they have to have a car. All of these things may be important to a particular volunteer, and right now we don't give them any ability to do that searching on their own. So introducing other types of search options, as in maybe an advanced search type of thing for the public, and giving them access to that information that you keep could be really valuable. Okay. Kelly's asking, do people find that suitability criteria is working? I would like to see it a checkbox that the agency would make the decision on where it fits rather than me. So you can of course, add suitability to your feedback form. The problem we have right now with our feedback forms, which I think is is that they don't get checkboxes. That's something that we want to address as part of this software development activity that we're doing. It's something that will be covered in sessions where we talk about data management, about how we can more effectively have our feedback forms usable by the public so that you can give them that checklist that they can check off. It's really a challenge right now. When all they get is a blank text box, how are they going to know what to put in? And it really relies on you providing help to them and them using it. It's not effective. If you presented them with that list of check boxes, just like you get, and they can tick off the ones that apply, you're far more likely to get good results out of that organization. So Kelly, I completely agree that that's a challenge right now of getting that information to be usable. So it will depend right now on the database to database how well people think they have been keeping track of that information. So like most of our search forms on the community information side, you would be able to choose whether you made suitability criteria available to the public. Even if we made it possible, you individually as a member would be able to make that choice. Is my suitability criteria in my database complete enough that I want the public to be using it to search with? It's not going to be the same for everyone. And I think once the public is able to check those boxes themselves, the quality of the information you have will be much better. So it's covered in a different session, but I completely agree that that's something that we really need in order to make that effective, because you need to get that information direct from the agency who's doing the posting. Okay. All right. So for those who are just making comments about, I like that, we have a record of that. I'm not going through sort of everyone saying, yes, I like that, I want that. I'm really only addressing questions, but I have read that, and we have it in our log. All right. No easy way to do a simple browse by community. So we have browse by area of interest, but I can't say, show me all the opportunities in Burlington. it seems so simple and so basic, and yet it's a feature we don't have. You have to go through the whole huge step-by-step rigmarole if you want to be able to look at all of the opportunities in a particular community. So that's a major deficiency, a really simple one that I think we're missing right now, is just an ability to say, where are the opportunities, and show me all the ones in my area. It seems so simple, but it's something that we don't have now. And we've already sort of addressed this, that we have no control over the steps. We have our 4 steps, and that's it. Everyone has to have the same 4 steps in the same order, whether they like it or not. And the ability to decide what those steps are, I think is a really important thing for our membership. Maybe that means there's potentially 10 different steps that you could choose from, and you decide which ones you want to have. And it could be different depending on staff, depending on public, depending on if you had a special portal for a particular reason and you want them to have different steps than another, that we give the ability for you to make some choices about what that step-by-step search looks like. And also potentially have a new search that allows you to do a bit more of an advanced search, and potentially all in one page, because honestly clicking through page can be annoying. Kelly is asking, would a simple solution be to put a click all button on the general area of interest after picking the town? I think it's that if all people want to do is browse by community, making them go through the steps is a little annoying. The click all button on the general area of interest is a good idea in itself. So in every step except the general area of interest, if you don't tick anything, it assumes you mean everything. But we don't do that in general area of interest. And the reason we don't is that because then on the next step, when you get specific, you'll get every specific area in the entire database. So that's why we have that mandatory step there. But I think when we're talking about only caring about the community and nothing else, where you just want to see what's available in your area, that having to click through those steps unnecessarily isn't beneficial. Kelly's asking, do you get all, even if they're not in the correct town? No, it would always have, if you had picked the criteria on step 1, it would always be only what was available from your step 1. But that could be a lot, depending on the database. I mean, everyone has a different number of opportunities. So Kelly's saying, isn't that what people want if they do that? It may be. It's just that, do we want to give them the ability to just go directly to the results without going step by step by step, if that's what they want? So they can do it now. It's not like you can't get all the results for community. You absolutely can get that even right now if that's what you want. It's whether or not it's beneficial to make people do all the steps if all they want to do is show all the opportunities. We have the browse by area of interest and the browse by organization because sometimes that's the way people want to approach it. Is in a they aren't really sure what they want. They just want to see what's available. How do you get them all unless you check them all off? So for Kelly, you can't. For general areas of interest, right now you have to check them all. That's true, just for the reasons that I just said. Again, this is something that it's optional. So if in your community it doesn't make sense to be able to just browse by area, then you wouldn't have to include it. But I do think that there's some areas where they would want this. I know there are because I'm getting responses saying so. It's just introducing that simplicity for people who don't want to have to go through a lot of steps and just look, especially because they don't know what they want. That's often an issue. They're not really sure. That's why we have things like browse available. It's because sometimes people aren't really sure what they want, and seeing what's available is beneficial in a broad sense. Okay. Okay. Sharon was pointing out again the ability to see all of them at once. So it would be the same. I mean, really you could list all of them if that's what you wanted to do. In our volunteer databases, there really comparatively are not so many records that it's even such a terrible thing to see the full listings, and that's certainly something we can that can be made possible, because there really are not going to be more than a few hundred at once in general, whereas in the other areas of our software we have to worry about thousands, tens of thousands of records coming up all at once. That just doesn't tend to be an issue in the volunteer software. So for those who want to be able to browse, I think having that capacity is useful. Okay. Next. So we've already addressed some of these, but these are some of the how can we fix these issues that we know we have. Adding a simple browse by community search, so the same way we already have browse by searches. Making the step-by-step search a custom search where people can pick the steps or criteria that are going to be available, and maybe allow people to do this from a single form instead of having to do step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. Have it all on one form where they can fill out just the things that they care about. That's one possible way we could approach improving it. Adding additional options that we've already discussed: age, suitability, interaction level, duration, transportation, potentially others. Commitment. Duration would be commitment length, just to clarify. The ability to create a special listings page for a one-time special event, and that may include a calendar of the dates of the special events, so that people can, usually people are aware of special events in their community and may come on specifically looking to volunteer for that event. So some easy way to identify those special events. Seems to be a really common feature of a lot of volunteer listings applications that are out there, is the ability to view a list of special events and opportunities for that event. Improving the schedule search. We talked about this. Is there a way to make it better? Is it helpful? And then other than that is really from you, what do you think would improve our searches, especially for the public? Pardon me, my computer is locked up here. I can't. There we go. Now I can move. What have you seen, or what do you know from talking to your volunteers about how we can make these searches better? Are there things that I haven't covered specifically around public searching? Because the next couple of sections talk about staff searching, but specifically around the public, are there other kinds of searches or other things we should be doing to our searches or considering for them that we haven't already talked about, aside from volunteer profile stuff, which is covered in another session? Okay, well, I'm assuming by silence that we've probably touched on, oh, we've got one. Here we go, one question. Someone expressing, this is Kelly expressing a like of the idea of a calendar. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Specifically around families and workplace groups looking to volunteer together. So having calendars to make that easier for those kinds of volunteers, certainly. We've had the idea of a calendar on our wish list for a long time. I think we actually implement a calendar. We have to really think about how that would work, and that's something that potentially that volunteer users group that's getting together can talk about. If we had a calendar, how would we want it to work? How would we want to tie a volunteer opportunity to particular postings on the calendar? How would we want that calendar to display? So it's something we can look at, but we're going to want input from the users about how it will actually work. And I think we would probably look to that volunteer users group to talk about that and how they might most effectively do that. And you'll get most of your ideas, honestly, from surfing other sites and seeing how they do it and seeing what you like and what you don't like about the way that they do it. Okay, next. Kelly was just saying that suitability checkbox would probably solve the issue she was saying. I think it will make a huge difference, and it is something we know we need to address, and that's something we'll be talking about in our data management session. So if you're interested in attending that one, I think we've already got a pretty big list of people coming. That's something that we'll try and hit in that session. We have a lot to cover, so there actually may be 2 data management sessions. But in one of those data management sessions, we'll be talking about how we're going to make that feedback form better. And that includes having those checkboxes right on the form that the public has, so that they don't have to guess at what they should be typing in, and they can check boxes just like you do. Okay. So the next section is really, it's pretty much a copy of what I discussed in the advanced search options for community information. So if any of you are in attendance for that session, this is really similar. From here on, it's really, really similar, almost the same as what we talked about for the community information module, and that's because for our advanced search and our saved search and our search results, a lot of how they work is really, really similar across both modules of the software, and the basic things that you can do are the same. So I'm not going to read directly from the many, many pages that I have here about how advanced searching works, but if you haven't had a chance to look through the PowerPoint yet, I encourage you to go in after the fact. It talks a little bit about how all of the various parts of the advanced search form work and what they can do and all of that kind of stuff. I'm not going to, it would take too long and not really be beneficial to go through here. There's 5 to 6 slides of it. The bottom line is our advanced search is available only to staff, but what a lot of people should be aware of is many of the searches that are on our advanced search form are actually available to the public. They just don't have a form to use them. So the same, when I click all of these things like communities and schedule and ages in my advanced search form, it's actually using all the same criteria that it would have used if I had done a step-by-step search. And when I get to my search results page, it's sending it just the same way that it would have if I'd done a step-by-step search. The difference is it's all in one form. And most of the things on this page are actually available to the public if they had the capacity to have a form to see it. So take the suitability search. That is actually available to the public in terms of if they ran this search, if they had a bookmark to it, they could go to it. So even right now, if I did a search, persons with a physical disability, and I bookmarked this, so I copied this link, and I put it on my website somewhere because I wanted to be able to do a posting. Here are all our opportunities that are listed as suitable for a person with a disability. This link would work for the public. They would get that result. And in fact, if I go into a record, when we get down to, does it show? There's even a link here. Oh, I didn't even link here. This should be linked. So here's an enhancement. In the community information software, most of our checklists are actually linked right in the results. So the same way that if I go down to volunteer categories, that I can click on them. There's no reason whatsoever why I can't, with almost no work, make these clickable as well. So that if someone saw persons with a visual impairment, that could be a link that we could click on and bring up a new search result. The capacity to do that is already built into the software, and it's a really easy change for us to make. And they have, in terms of permission, the public can run that search. It would allow them to execute that search. Some of the options on the advanced search form, they can't. Like add SQL, if someone from the public tried to execute that, it would just ignore it. It would not allow it. Likewise, they can't include deleted records if their deleted records are not available in their view. They can't include expired records. They can't search fields that they can't see. So there are some things that are security restricted, but many, if they can see the field, they can search it. So that means that pretty much all the checklist searches that you see here, they can run those searches. even though they don't have access to it in terms of a form, the capacity is there. And if you bookmark the search and make it available, they can access it. So even before we do any of the enhancements that we're talking about to make these available, you do have that choice to make it available to them if you want to. And if we want to do things like change our record details to include search links for suitability or seasons or whatever it is, one-time special event, I can make the words one-time special event be clickable so that if they click that, it would do a search for all the one-time special events in your database. That is so easy to do and something that we already do on the community information side for all of our checklists, and the search code is already written. So this is an incredibly simple enhancement that we can make if people feel that it's a beneficial one for the public. Incredibly easy to make. Anytime, I can even do it now. So yes, I encourage you to read all the specific details about how all of the advanced search page options work. This has got details about everything on the advanced search page and how it works. I'm not going to go through it now, but it's there for your reference. What we will talk about a bit is the possible changes to the advanced search page. These are just pretty much the same list that we had for our community information side, so they're pretty general. It's not as much of an issue on the volunteer software, but the ability to only use parts of the form that you want to use, the form can get very large. It's not so bad on the volunteer side, but this is a very, very big form, and if you really only end up using a few of these options on a regular basis, it would be nice to be able to save the parts that you use regularly and have just a nice short form for what you regularly use, and then the ability to switch to the full form if you need it. So the idea here is you can sort of customize your own little advanced search form that you personally like to use, and then if you ever need to use the whole form, you can switch into using the whole form. But it means you don't have to navigate a big giant form if that's not what you generally like to use. We know we want to have the ability to search within our results. So if I do a search for a particular community and then I want to sort of take those results and search them again to get more refined results, I don't have that capability right now. Again, not as much of a concern here because you don't tend to have thousands and thousands of records, but it's certainly a helpful feature to be able to say, okay, here I have 50 records. I want to narrow that down. We have no ability right now for you to take those 50 records and then search within those 50 records. You'd have to restart your search from scratch with all new criteria. There's no ability to take your search results and search just within your search results. Ability to review your recent search history. So if you performed a search recently, the ability to see the searches you've done recently and quickly go back to them. An ability to easily search for records that have feedback and bring them up in your search results. For those who like to see what they've searched for, we have at the bottom display the details of my search, right, where it says you performed a search for persons with a hearing impairment or persons with a visual impairment. By default, it doesn't tell you about your search, and you have to remember to check that box every single time, and the reality is it's annoying. People don't remember to check the box. So having it remember your preference, if you like it to always show your results in a new window or always display the details of your search, that it would remember your preference, that every time you came back to that advanced search page, it would default to whatever you prefer to use instead of having to remember to tick them off every time. Again, these are basic. I don't think any of these, honestly, are high priority for any of you. You can correct me if I'm wrong. They're there mainly because you would get them, if we did them on the community information side, you would just get these as a bonus. If I'm wrong, let me know, but I don't think that these are high priority items for you guys. The ability to select multiple record owners instead of just one. So from our record owner search, which is up here, you can only pick one record owner at a time. And this would allow you to tick box off multiple record owners in your search instead of just one at a time. And our keyword searching does allow something called Boolean searching. There's information on it in the help files if you click page help. There's details in search terms about what Boolean searching is and how it works. If you choose to have access to Boolean searching from your advanced search form, maybe it'll say and, or, not, etc. If you screw it up, if you don't write your Boolean search correctly, the search just fails, and it doesn't tell you why it fails. It just blows up. And so one of the things we'd like to be able to do is try and make fixes for you if your Boolean searches are incorrect, to try and infer what you meant and fix it, and also to give you more information about what you did wrong when you write a Boolean search so that you can fix it. Right now, if I pick Boolean and I don't put and or, it just goes, doesn't work. I have to have the word and in, and there's nothing anyway, so nothing with cat and dog in it. But if I don't put the word and in, you get nothing. It doesn't work, basically. So I don't think that anyone really is using that very much on the volunteer side, but if we make that change on the community information side, you would just automatically get it because it uses all the same search code between both modules. So some of these that are higher priority on the community information side, if we made those changes, you would automatically get them. But I don't think that these are high priority changes on this side of the software. Saved searches, again, I'm not sure, does anyone here use saved searches with any regularity? I'm not sure if this is really something of major use on the volunteer side. Be interested to know. I mean, I can go and look in your database and do counts, but got an answer here. No, I don't think that saved searches are used often. I mean, I can go in and get counts out of the databases and see how many saved searches are actually in use in the volunteer software, but I don't think it's very high. So there's information here if you want to read about saved searches and changes we want to make to them. I'm not going to go into it in any detail. But if you want to look at it and have some idea of what it is so that when it comes up as a priority, you know, you can comment on whether you think it's important to your organization or not. I honestly don't think that on this side of the software it is, but you should be aware of the kinds of changes that we're proposing to make to saved searches because it is a bit more of an important issue on the community information side of the software. And any change, because it's shared code, any change or enhancement that we make to the community information side in terms of saved searches, you would automatically get because it really is no extra cost for us to give it to you on the volunteer side if we're already making that change on the community information side. So for an FYI, I do encourage you to read the section on advanced search on saved search and the My List as well, just for your information so that you can be aware of some of the changes that are higher priority on that side that would affect you as well. I don't believe that any of these are anywhere near the top of the list, but if they are, you'll have an opportunity during the prioritization session to put those on your wish list because at the end of this, everything we're talking about today has to come down to some concrete suggestions about changes we want to make to the software, and since we can't do everything, we'll be relying on all of you to let us know what your priorities are. And by understanding what we've talked about today and the kinds of changes we might make, hopefully you'll be able to respond about which ones are important changes to you and which ones aren't. And that will go into the decision-making process about what we actually do during this project. Not to say that anything we don't do now won't be done eventually. It's just what is the high priority to do first. Search results. Would people like me to go through search results a little bit further about what we know about search results and changes we want to make, or is that sort of low priority and people want to just read the details in the presentation? Other than that, we're at general wrap-up. So I can go through search results information if people like, or I can leave it to you to sort of review what I've written about search results on your own time, and you'll still have the same opportunity when it comes down to prioritizing to comment about it. And we can just see if there's any general questions about searching or comments about searching. It's really up to you. Okay, hearing none, I'm going to now say I'm open to any other comments, questions, anything. Anything that I've skipped over that you actually would like me to go back to and cover in detail, I will. So this is your moment. It's not cut off after this session, so you can continue to give feedback. You can take this PowerPoint, read it on your own time, give more feedback later. There's no rush on this. You've got probably till at least the end of March to be asking more questions and getting more information. And our last session, our last two sessions of these users groups are going to be general, one for each module. And you'll have an opportunity at that time to come back and ask any further questions on any of the topics. One question. Where did it go? Oh, Barb is asking if we can unmute people. Absolutely, we can unmute people. Let's see. Why is there not an unmute all button? Okay, it's only a mute all button. Here we go. Okay, I'm unmuting everyone. So if anyone would like open chat, everyone is now unmuted. So you can either type your question if you're having a problem with your mic or phone, or you can speak.
I have all the workshop materials. We have to photocopy. Create an attendance sheet. So, yeah, Eileen could do that because we're not controlling the.
Barb, did you want to do any sort of end of meeting follow-up or questions to people to ensure we've covered everything?
I presume he's going to bring. Oh no, they'll probably be in the photocopy.
Okay. Well, I think unless anyone comes up with anything in the next 3 seconds, I'm going to assume that we've pretty much covered everything. Again, this is not the end, so if you think of something after the call, please do get back to me or Liz or anyone on the committee, post on the message board, whatever makes sense to you. If after reading the PowerPoint you have further questions, you can just let me know. One question here. Oh, done. Okay. So I hope that was helpful and gave you some food for thought. I think a number of the things we've discussed really feed back into that general volunteer users group that we've discussed and is really something for them to try and take on to figure out what it is that you really want to do with some of these things. And once you decide that, we'll really, having the technical tool respond to that is the easy part. So hopefully that group can come together and make a bit of progress there. Okay? Thank you all very, very much. Thank you. Very good.
Thank you, folks. Have a great afternoon and a great weekend.
Thanks, Barb.
And sign up for the next workshops. Or the, not workshops, the consultations. Thanks, folks.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.